This experience is the reason why I am deathly afraid of intruders breaking into my home. So, I was 10 years old at the time, and it was summer break after finishing 5th grade. Maybe the 2nd or 3rd week of June. I don't really remember why, but my mom had to go to a dinner with some of her co-workers from the daycare she worked at one night. She left my older sister, who was only 12, to watch over me. But my older sister was more so there to make sure that the house doesn't burn down rather than watching over me. So that night, my mom left for the dinner, and she said she would be right back. I remember I was in the living room, and my older sister was upstairs in her room. I was also downstairs with Fenrir, who was a black Newfoundland that I grew up with my entire life. Unfortunately, by the time I was 10, he was showing his age. He could walk, run, or stand up like he used to. We would usually have to help him get up and walk him outside to the backyard, which had a porch. The porch had a walkway we had built so that Fenrir could walk down easier. We would also have to bring his food and water bowls over to him, as he was always too tired to get up. So, I'm watching TV in the living room with Fenrir lying down by the side of the couch. Suddenly, I hear this loud growling. I muted the TV, turned around, and saw Fenrir growling and snarling at something. He then started barking at something. I looked over and saw that he was directing his attention at the back door that led to the backyard, but I didn't see anything, as it was pitch black outside. Suddenly, Fenrir just stood up with seemingly little to no effort and was violently growling, snarling, and barking. Keep in mind, he hasn't been able to get up by himself in a while. So to just see him stand up like he was young again scared the shit out of me. I used to say that it was like as if Fenrir got possessed, and he was still directing his attention to the back door. Before I could react, Fenrir suddenly jogged over to the back door and got up on his hind legs and started scratching on the glass that was on the door, still growling and barking. At first, I thought that a squirrel probably got up to the porch and came up to the door. But then I remembered that Fenrir wasn't even this aggressive towards squirrels. When he would see one when he was younger, he would bark and chase it, yes, but it was more so to scare the squirrel off rather than hurt it. And to add to that, Fenrir was not an aggressive dog. He was always sweet to people and other pets. He was also usually calm, so to see him going feral like this actually scared me. He sounded like he wanted to kill something. I finally walked over to the back door that Fenrir was clawing at. I sort of pushed him away, surprised that he didn't snap at me, and I decided to put my face up against the glass to peek out and see if anything was there, but I didn't see anything. All the while, Fenrir is still scratching, growling, barking, and now baring his teeth and drooling to my right. I then walked to the right, where there was a light switch that turned on the porch lights, and Fenrir went back into his spot, scratching and growling and whatever he was upset about. Then I flipped on the light switch. And the second that happened, I saw a man dressed in all black. Classic burglar outfit with gloves, a ski mask, and everything. At first, he was seemingly looking into the door, with his face and hands pressed up against it. And when I turned on the lights, he got startled and took a few steps back. He then turned over to me, and it was like time was frozen. We were both just frozen staring at each other for a few seconds. And me being only 10 and not really knowing what to do, I quickly reached out to the knob of one of the back doors, more specifically the door that Fenrir was still scratching at, and swung the door open. The guy tried to run, but Fenrir was right on top of him. The guy wasn't even able to get off the porch before Fenrir latched onto it. When I say latched on, I mean latched on. Fenrir had first bitten down on the guy's leg and then moved and was biting down on the guy's arm. The guy tried to hit Fenrir off him, but he was just not able to. And I was just frozen, staring down at Fenrir really biting down on him. To be honest, I was more so scared of my own dog than the guy that was most likely going to break in, since I've never seen him be this aggressive in my entire life. I thought that Fenrir was just going to straight up kill the guy. Eventually, the guy screams in agony, which I guess caused my sister to run downstairs to see what was going on. Not sure why she didn't come downstairs when Fenrir was growling and barking the first time, but I digress. My older sister was freaking out and eventually called 911. She then told me to go to my bedroom, which was also upstairs, and so I did. I ran up to my bedroom and just stayed there in shock of what I had just seen and the whole situation in general. A while later, the police showed up and my mom eventually showed up. She burst through my bedroom and basically gave me the tightest bear hug I've ever gotten from her. I remember that she was also crying, worried sick that I was hurt. While I was shaken up, I wasn't physically hurt. At one point, I finally go downstairs and I see my older sister talking to a police officer, while Fenrir was lying down next to her, with some blood on his face, much like Cujo. I remember thinking, oh my god, Fenrir just killed somebody. And then I also remembered that when I put my face up against the glass on one of the back doors to see what Fenrir was so pissed off, and I most likely put my face directly where the guy still had his face up against it on the other side. So I made indirect eye contact with this guy before I turned on the lights without even knowing it. However, while the guy lost a lot of blood, he didn't die. And to be honest, I don't really know what happened to the guy afterwards, other than he had to have gotten arrested. My mom was instantly looking into buying a new house and moving, and we all eventually moved when I was maybe 11 or 12. Unfortunately, before that, first, I developed my intense fear of dealing with intruders, so much so that I couldn't look outside windows when it was pitch black outside for a while because I was afraid I was just going to see a face right there. And second, a few months before we moved, we had to put Fenrir down because he was just too old now. Needless to say, 2014 was the year that my childhood and innocence died. I'm 18 years old and I have since been able to look outside windows when it's dark outside now. While I still am afraid of intruders, it's not as bad as it used to be. When I move out, I'm definitely getting a big dog of my own. I will forever be thankful for you, Fenrir. Had it not been for you, who knows what that guy could have done to either me or my older sister. I grew up in a small, rural town where nothing ever happens. The sort of place where it wasn't unusual to leave your doors unlocked and your closest neighbors are a mile or so from your house. Our family also had this giant old cat, Tag, who was a bit of a drama king, but we loved him. One summer, when I was around 9 or 10 years old, the cat starts going ballistic. Tag generally slept in my room curled up next to me until I fell asleep, and then would get up to doing whatever cat things he did at night. Occasionally, he would meow or try to wake me up on unfortunate nights when he could see the bottom of his food bowl and needed a midnight snack. Usually, if I ignored him, he would give up or rarely go try to wake up my mom instead. This night, however, he bangs against my parents' bedroom door until he gets in and is meowing loud enough to wake us up. Our bedroom doors were next to each other, and I called to Tag to come to bed because it's about 2 a.m. He is having none of it and is carrying on. My mom gets up, goes down to the kitchen, and then huffs back up with Tag on her heels, still meowing insanely. She said his bowl had plenty of food and he just walked her to the door of the kitchen. Tag was an indoor/outdoor cat, but had his own cat door through the garage, so there was no need for one of us to let him out. My mom said my brother must have left the kitchen door open, and just the screen door was shut, but she wasn't holding it open forever for the cat to just stand there and not go out. She shut the kitchen door and went back to sleep, firmly shutting her bedroom door this time so Tag couldn't let himself back into their room. I always kept treats for him in my room and offered him one, but he was still meowing at their door, trying to get them up. I grabbed him and brought him into my room and shut my door to try to get him to sleep. I lay in bed, trying to go back to sleep, and Tag meows at my door wanting back out. I finally open my door and he bolts back downstairs towards the kitchen, and that's when I heard what sounded like a door slamming. I have 3 older siblings though, and someone is always up watching TV or running to the bathroom, so I think nothing of it. The cat finally stalks back into my room, but instead of curling up in my armpit like usual, he sat at the bottom of my bed staring at my door. I fell asleep until morning when some commotion wakes me up, and I pad down to the kitchen to find my parents on the phone with the police. They got up as usual to get ready for work, and while making coffee, my mom went to grab her rings from the little jewelry dish she had by the sink, because she would take them off in the evenings to rinse dishes and load the dishwasher, but discovered the dish was empty this morning. Small town, so the sheriff sends a deputy over, and when my dad walks out to meet them, sees the ATV is missing from out back. The key is off the key ring. My brothers are all up at this point too, and we are all freaked out that while we were sleeping some robber came in and removed the ATV key and saw an opportunity to take my mom's rings. They were asking if we had any clue when it happened, and my parents say no. My mom asked my middle brother, who was a freshman in college and home for the summer, what time he ended up off the couch last night and if he heard anything. He said he went to bed at 10 or 11 and asked what she meant as his bedroom was in the basement and he wouldn't have heard anything in the kitchen. She said, but you were in the living room off the kitchen when I went to feed the cat and shut the door you left open, and I told you not to sleep on my couch and go to your bed as I went back upstairs. He told Mom he was in the basement since dinner and never went out or came upstairs again. He watched a movie in the basement living room before going to bed in his own bedroom. She goes white and realizes that the cat must have been trying to warn us someone came into the house, and the robber dove onto the couch and covered up to hide when she came to the kitchen and exited after she went back to bed. The cops said for someone to be so brazen, they probably knew our family, knew our habits, but didn't count on the cat being so overprotective, and had probably intended to steal more but was afraid the cat may wake the whole house. It has been over 20 years since this happened, and the robber was never caught, but it is unnerving to think it was probably someone who had been to our home before as a friend. Thank God for our cat. I was a pretty and relatively smart 15-year-old girl, a good kid who did well in school despite a tough childhood. I was working at an amusement park full-time during the summer. The area I lived in could be sketchy, but having grown up with little to no adult supervision, I was used to trying to look out for myself. My father was out of town, mother was long out of the picture, and my sister, 3 years older, and myself were staying at our home alone. I finished work at 11 p.m. when the park closed and walked home by myself as I usually did. It wasn't far, perhaps 10 minutes. I arrived home, my sister was still out somewhere, and I got ready for bed, putting my pajamas on and crawled into bed. I was starting to fall asleep but heard a small noise. I didn't know what it was, but it didn't seem like a usual house noise. My bedroom was on the second floor with stairs leading up. I didn't hear anything after that noise, didn't investigate, just chalked it up to nothing. I started to fall back asleep when I heard what sounded like hesitant footsteps on the stairs. I was instantly awake, but in my mind, it was my sister coming home and climbing the stairs where her bedroom was. Still in bed, I yelled out, "Wendy, Wendy, is that you?" I heard nothing back. I yelled again, "Wendy, is that you?" Nothing, more footsteps. I was petrified, but as I tell the story to this day, I don't understand some of my reactions that night, so really can't explain them. I got out of bed, opened the ajar bedroom door fully, and went out to the stairs, where I stood at the top. Below me, about halfway up the stairs, was a man I had never seen before. He looked to be early 20s, a little taller than my 5'7", not a big guy, but solid with blonde curly hair. I asked him what he was doing. His reply was a garbled mess, something along the lines of, "Where's Wendy? My mother told me not to get mixed up with women. Where's Wendy?" From his manner and wild-eyed look, he seemed like he may have been doing drugs. He had followed me home from the park and was asking, "Where's Wendy?" in response to my calling out for her. For some reason, I got very angry, not just scared, and started screaming at him to get out of the house, that I was going to call my father and Wendy, and he needed to just get out. To my surprise, he did. He turned around, ran back down the stairs, and I didn't see where he went after that. But it turns out he must have left. I have no idea how he got in, but he was definitely there for me. That's why he followed me. Not burglary or anything else. He was looking to rape and who knows what else. I think the only reason he left was because he had no idea where my sister Wendy was, thought she was in the house, and it was an added complication to him getting caught. I was so shaken. I stayed up the rest of the night. I didn't call the cops, didn't call a friend. The only person I told was my sister the next day. I don't know why. I just sat in a rocking chair, clutching my cat and rocking and crying, staying awake till the next morning. My sister never did come home that night. She stayed at a friend and came home the next day. This happened 35 years ago. I never told anyone till now. When I was maybe 9 or 10, my father and I were driving through some rural country areas when his car ran out of gas. He was aiming to get to a nearby gas station, an old middle-of-nowhere style mart that we would stop in to get pickled eggs and sweet tea on these country drives. It was hot, and I was annoyed, ready to get home and watch TV. He popped out of the truck and got his gas canister, and we planned to walk the mile down the road to fill up. After a couple minutes of walking, I started complaining. I got sand spurs in my laces, I'm sweating, I'm bored. My father, being the kooky guy he was, threw his thumb out, deciding we would catch a ride. A couple folks passed us. I don't blame them. He was rocking a Charles Manson-style look back then. And to hitchhikes in 2007. Finally, a beat-up minivan pulled over. In it was a middle-aged couple and 3 kids. Think country church types. Very ordinary folks, if not a little granola with a spaced-out energy. The kids were younger than me. I remember rolling my eyes, "You snotty boys." The woman asked my dad if everything was okay. He explained the situation, and sweet as pie she suggested, "We can go on and grab it for you, and your girl can ride along with us to get in the AC." The middle seat of the minivan had 2 open seats, and my dad thanked them and asked if we could both climb in. That's when the couple's energy changed. They insisted there's only space for a little girl like me. "Come on, climb in." My intuition was saying no way, and my dad, though, open to hitchhiking and getting us into other random trouble on the usual, seemed to have a similar wariness. He thanked them and offered that we wait in his truck in the AC while they do the run. Now, the couple was talking to me, a mix of sweet and commanding. "It'll take a minute. We'll get you a soda at the gas station. Get in." My father said, "My baby's sticking with me," and started looking down the highway for another ride. When he peered out at the road, the man stepped out of the passenger seat and scooped me in by my armpits. The woman shoved a picture book into my hands, cooing, "Look, we'll have fun." Not taking in the full situation, I remember feeling annoyed at being babied, but polite because in the South you're supposed to respect your elders. The man was about to slide the door closed, and the next part happened fast. My dad pushed past him and yanked me out. Meanwhile, she shifted into drive as the man got back into his seat. They sped off, side door still open. Between the velocity of an angry protective dad and a lurching vehicle, I landed in the ditch. Unharmed, but shaken up, I followed my dad back to the car in silence. He called a friend, and we waited till they showed up to work out the gas situation. Years later, I wonder about this couple's intentions. It's very possible they saw a kind of rough around the edges man and a young girl and thought to help me. But mind you, I'm his spitting image, so visually obviously his child, showing no signs of distress besides attitude. They had no good reason to not drive him along too, or to just do the gas run on their own and bring it back if they were so good-natured. I was taught stranger danger, but never expected it from a couple with kids. I still don't know what to make of it. Never saw them again. So, this happened 20 years ago, but it's one of the most vivid memories I have from my childhood. One night my parents and my best friend's parents decided to take us out to a little neighborhood Italian restaurant for dinner. Cozy, quiet little place we'd been to a million times because it is in walking distance from our apartment building. It was set back in a strip mall that basically shut down after dark except for a donut shop that stayed open late. There was the San Fernando Valley in the early 90s. Very sleepy. Streets empty at night. So, just behind the restaurant a steep hill loomed up to form a hilly part of the city. Me, aged 8, and my best friend, who was 10, had finished our food and asked to go sit out front of the restaurant on the benches by the front door. Within eyesight of our parents, but for a little autonomy, you know. We were sitting chatting when suddenly a huge Rottweiler dog, wearing a collar that was dragging a long broken chain behind it, like a real heavy chain, not a dog leash, comes walking past the restaurant heading out of the parking lot towards the busy street that bordered it. We were really surprised to see such a big, beautiful animal just abandoned in a parking lot at night, but we let him pass since he seemed like he knew where he was going and we weren't about to test to see if he was friendly, since he looked like Cujo. About 5 minutes later, a man in an open-top Jeep drives by and stops right in front of us and says, "Hey, did you girls see a dog pass through here?" He was riding in my Jeep, and he just jumped off for no reason, and I can't find him. See, he even broke his chain, and held up a length of chain attached to one of the Jeep's roll bars. Wanting to be helpful, we were like, yeah, we saw him. He went that way," and pointed toward the busy road. But instead of following in the direction, we pointed he parked the car right in front of us and said, "Well, maybe he hasn't gotten too far. Would you mind helping me look?" Red flag. So, dumbasses that we were, we said sure. A lost doggy, what could be more potent to a little girl's heart? So the man says, "Follow me," and starts heading in the opposite direction, that the dog went and into a dark service alley behind the restaurant. So on one side of the little walkway was the hillside slanting up at an 80% angle, and on the other was the unlit industrial back of the restaurant. Just as we were following him back behind the corner of the restaurant, our parents happened to be exiting the restaurant. They didn't see us out front, so they started calling our names. We told him sorry, but we had to go. When we explained to our parents where we'd been and how we'd been helping with a dog recovery mission, my mom's head just about exploded. Both moms started screaming at us for being so stupid, and then screaming where was the man, who we hadn't seen since we left him in the alley behind the restaurant, because they were going to call the police and have him arrested or kill him themselves. They didn't even believe us that we had seen a dog pass right in front of us, dragging a broken chain, and it matched his story. But in retrospect, why would an adult man ask two little girls to help him search for his dog down an unlit back pathway? I'll never know, and I'm glad. For some context, I live in a major city and currently don't do a lot of driving due to ongoing issues with my car, and the pandemic has made me turn to more delivery apps in general. So the other day around 1 p.m., I decided to order some lunch after doing a lot of cleaning. I placed the Uber Eats order and found something to watch while I waited for the food. Within a few minutes, a driver accepted the order, and I noticed right away that the driver, Anthony, was on a bike, didn't have a profile picture, or any deliveries on record. At first, I wasn't alarmed at all. I was almost amused, like, oh wow, guess I'm this person's first ever customer. But then a full 30 minutes passes with no driver movement on the app, and at this point, I think maybe something is glitching out or the driver is stuck. I contact support via the chat option, and they ended up assigning a new driver because they couldn't reach the first one. Odd, but whatever. Now is when it starts getting a little weirder. The new driver assigned is in the exact same spot as the original driver was. They are also on a bike, also have no profile picture, and have no prior deliveries as well, and this driver's name was Lori. I let another 20 minutes pass with no driver movement before I message them myself and say, "Hi there. Are there any issues with the order?" The app shows that the driver saw the message, but no response. All this time I'm checking to see if Uber Eats is maybe experiencing issues. None that I could find, and at this point, while I'm definitely weirded out, I'm mostly just hungry, so I contact support again to request some assistance. They reassign the driver again and apologize for the inconvenience. Same deal, they also tried to contact the driver with no response. Finally, the third driver assigned is the exact same scenario. Same spot on a bike, no profile picture, no prior deliveries. Only this time, the name is Robert, and before I can react and go about canceling the order at this point because I'm tired of dealing with this, he suddenly has my food and immediately messages me the following. "Hello. Have your food. What's your phone number?" And I respond right away with, "I'm not super comfortable giving my phone number out when you can just message me here." And he responded again with, "What's your number? Be there in 10. How old are you?" And at this point the alarm bells are going off and I contact support immediately to have the order canceled and get further assistance. I get connected to Uber's safety team who informs me that the order has been canceled, I'll be refunded, and started taking down the details of the strange interactions. As I'm giving the woman on the phone the info she needs, I'm starting to calm down thinking, this was just some creep or something, and that's when I hear a man's voice at the front door. "Miss, I have your food," and I can't even describe the chill that went down my spine because of the way he said it. Making things even worse, the Uber safety woman on the phone with me heard him as well and goes, "Is that him? We canceled the order." I poked my head around the door. Main heavy door was open. Metal screen door was closed and locked, but allowed us to see each other, to get a look at him. And when he saw me on the phone, he went from smiling to looking furious. He suddenly got right up against the door and kept asking who I was on the phone with. And at this point I've started asking him to please leave because he's making me uncomfortable and he's getting more and more angry. And at this point starts pounding on my door and grabbing the doorknob while shouting to be let in. The woman on the phone is asking if I'm okay. The man is still shouting, so basically, I'm in full meltdown mode at this point and hurriedly close the heavy door to lock it. The man is becoming borderline belligerent as he kicks my door, and the woman tells me to call the police. He ended up walking away from my house about a minute after T-chat and back up to the sidewalk, and for a moment I thought he went away. So I finished my conversation with the Uber safety woman so she could submit the report. Once she submitted it, I called the police and told them what happened. They weren't incredibly helpful at first since he didn't actually break in or put his hands on me, and they told me if he came back to call again, and they would send an officer out. I did end up having to call them again and give a full report plus description of the man. Since he didn't end up leaving right away, he stayed in the neighborhood for almost 20 minutes. According to one of my neighbors, after she heard the yelling, she saw the man I described walk back up from my house to the sidewalk and hop into a truck with another man in the passenger seat, and they apparently just sat there staring at people walking by and being incredibly sketchy. And that's when she walked back towards my house and asked me what happened. Luckily, she was able to give myself and the cop a description of the vehicle and the other man as well. So basically, this was a very bizarre and uncomfortable experience, and I wanted to share it to maybe see if anyone has ever experienced anything like this, because honestly, I'm still pretty shaken up and will be avoiding delivery apps for quite a while. This actually happened a few hours ago, and I am still unsettled about the whole encounter. I've had creeps tailgate me or try to grab my attention on the road, and I just ignore them, which always worked, but this guy takes the golden medal. My shift starts at the afternoon, and I was feeling off for most of the day. A beautiful sunny day, mind you. You know, one of those days where you drag yourself out of your bed to adulting. I decided to lift my mood up, so I wore something new that I had. A beautiful creamy white faux fur vest, and I hit the road. Look like $1,000,000, feel like $1,000,000, right? Maybe not. I played some piano tracks and hoped that I'll get out of this funk. I just needed something to comfort me, and those two things didn't cut. While I was driving to work, I decided to grab a drink. An iced crisp green tea will definitely lift my spirit. There were two branches of a famous coffee shop, you know who, a grinning mermaid who's playing Twister, ring the bell. I could have gone to the first one with the drive-through, but they use a pretty crappy tea brand as they ran out of the good stuff. So I had to go to the one that was inside a mall. Anything to feel better, right? I parked my car and I saw a private fleet of black SUV, making it difficult to view the entrance. This is important later. I grabbed a cold bottle of water and headed to the counter. I paid for my drink and got a cherry lollipop, cause why not? Waited for my drink, and once I got it I started walking out. I had to pass a fountain in the courtyard before I can reach the exit. I slowed my pace as I noticed that I was walking too fast. I felt a bit off, but brushed it off. As I passed between the SUV a bus shot through quickly, I stopped in shock as I almost walked in its path. This didn't make me realize what was happening, as I got distracted and wasn't aware of my surroundings. As I walked further, I had to pass an area where there isn't anyone. It was shaded but still outdoor. Almost like under a bridge-style building, if that makes sense. This was the way to my car. I noticed that I wasn't aware of my surroundings till I heard footsteps on my right. Then I saw a man in my peripheral vision walking and matching my speed. At first, I thought he was in a uniform, so I assumed he was a part of the cleaning staff in the mall. I felt off, but I told myself that I am being paranoid and overthinking. Next to my car and on my left side was a woman with a child who were getting into their car. This will make sense later. I was sandwiched between my car and hers. I was getting my keys out of my fur vest, and then I had to turn around in order to open my driver door, as I was a bit ahead of it. Once I turned, I saw a man standing, looked like in his late 30s, skinny, average height. He had dark blue baseball cap with sunglasses, a gray shirt with some print on it, and black sweatpants. Crocs shoes with socks. He was so close that it took me by surprise, and I was startled. But being nice and polite is in my blood. So I assumed nothing. The first thing that he said, "Why are you afraid?" I told him that I wasn't and asked him what he wanted. "Is your car for sale?" He said while grinning. I said no. Then he started to ask about how my day was going and stuff along those lines. The heck? I don't know you. Alarm bells were ringing in my head. I smiled as to not escalate the situation. I knew I had to do something. He was blocking my way to the mall entrance, and if I decided to go the other way, which is a pretty large, shaded parking lot with few people here and there. It was nice to meet you, but I had to leave. I said while smiling. "Give me your phone number," he said bluntly. I just repeated the same phrase and took a step closer to my door, as I didn't want to show him that I was afraid. I was pooping bricks at that moment. Then he said something that made me want to crawl out of my skin. "Give me your phone number so I don't have to chase you around in my car." At this moment I knew I had to move fast, so I opened my door and ignored him. He kept talking and I wasn't sure what he was saying as it felt muffled. My anxiety was higher than tip of Mount Everest now, and I was hit with this realization that even in public spaces, and in broad daylight with people around, you can lose your sense of safety in a split of a second. I closed the door quickly and locked it. My fingers felt weak, but I managed to turn on the car. He kept knocking on my window. He was so insistent. I put my car on reverse mode, but I couldn't back out. The woman was halfway getting out of her parking spot, thus forcing me to wait. He kept knocking pretty hard and saying stuff. At that moment I honestly couldn't hear him. All I wanted was to nope out of there. I was so afraid, it just baffled. I had to look at the window to see when the road will get clear so I could back out while he was standing in front of my window rapidly knocking it. I avoided making eye contact with him. Once the road was clear, I hit the gas pedal and speed off. I drove to random places while my eyes were fixed on my rear view mirror to make sure he wasn't following me. It was so hard to breathe as my chest felt so heavy and my heat was beating out of my chest. I was glad he wasn't there. This creep followed me around the mall and waited for the right moment. I was alone and threatened me to give him my phone number and was totally unaware of how a creep he was. My therapist will definitely hear about this. To the guy with baseball cap and Crocs with socks, let's not ever meet again. This happened in 2019, but it's still in the back of my mind. I worked at Chick-fil-A. That night I was supposed to close, but I left at like 8 p.m.-ish. I already know I'm going to spend like 30 to 45 minutes driving around to my usual Pokemon stops. At 8 p.m. on a Wednesday, there's some cars on the roads but not many. Smaller town W, little police presence. Not much crime happens here. I've done this before. I know which spots to go to. I'm driving to the spots I know I can reach from the inside of my car. Just got off work from standing and being busy all day. I wasn't about to go walking around when it was dark out anyways. The places I know have little to no cars at them. I pull into the parking lot by the high school field, spin the stops and click on a few Pokemon. I get ready to pull on the residential street. I'm kind of just sitting at the stop sign for a bit. No cars behind me. I'm not really in a hurry. Blinker. Then I turn left onto the street. I see two cars in front of me, an older white SUV and a sedan in front of that. They're 4 blocks ahead. I notice the SUV isn't really in its lane. It's driving in the middle of the road like it wants to pass the sedan. It definitely could have just passed it. The road was really wide and no oncoming cars. I'm glancing down at my phone in the cup holder, trying not to go too fast. Kind of want walking points. Then I notice the white SUV that was driving in the middle of the road is driving really slow on the shoulder of the road. Maybe they noticed me, wondering what I'm doing. Maybe I'm weirding them out. I click my phone shut and drive normally. I'm nearly behind the SUV now, and it speeds up quickly. Takes a hard right turn onto a street. I see the SUV pull into a driveway. As I'm passing that side street, I see the SUV going in reverse, and now it's backing out of that driveway. I'm behind the other sedan now at a 4-way stop. In my rear view mirror, the white SUV is turning back on the street. It's now going to be behind me. The sedan waits its turn at the 4-way stop, then turns left. I wait my turn, then go straight. I'm watching to see if the white SUV goes straight too. It does. The SUV had to wait its turn at the 4-way stop, so I'm a good 4 or 6 blocks ahead on this residential street. I want to lose this car, so I'm going like 30 mph when the speed limit is maybe 20 or 25. I turn behind the church strip mall. The church has a playground behind it, but it's pretty much an alleyway. I lost the SUV. I stopped in the alley, waiting, looking in my side mirror. And sure enough, the white SUV is barreling down the street. It almost passed me, it was going so fast, but it spots me and turns into the alley where I'm parked, coming towards my car. I'm freaked out at this point. This alley is dark, there's no streetlights. The stores in the strip mall are abandoned, but the church is on the other side and it's well lit. So I want to go there. I speed down the alley and around the building. The SUV is doing the same thing. I turn around the building, can't see them in my rear view. I stop my car and park in front of the well-lit church doors. Basically, parked in the fire lane. I'm watching my rear view mirror, waiting for this car. I know it's back there and it's going to drive around me. They'll see it was all just a misunderstanding. The SUV is there. It peeks around the building corner. They stop and wait a little bit before it turns towards where I'm parked. The SUV slowly drives by my car. They pass me slowly and I don't want to look at them. From my peripheral vision, I just see one outline in the driver's seat. As they pass me, I can feel this person's eyes on me and can see their head turning. I'm uncomfortable, but I don't want to start a conversation with them, so I don't roll down my windows, and I do not want to look at them. I don't want to acknowledge them. I really just want them to see I'm not who they probably thought I was. They pass me completely, and the SUV starts to drive towards the exit of the parking lot. But then the SUV starts to circle around again, making a big loop around in the empty church parking lot. My body fills with dread. I'm actually scared now. I gave them the benefit of the doubt, but now they're coming back around. I don't want to know what they want anymore. When they start to circle back around, I take off out of that parking lot. But so do they. My car bottoms out and I speed down the street. So is theirs. The police station is way out near the countryside on outskirts of town. But there's a police annex on this street. Sometimes there's cops parked out front. I know I'm just going to park there, and if they're still following me, I'll call 911. This car is following me 100%. They turned when I've turned, sped when I've sped. And as I turn my blinker, take a right into the annex, they turn left, and they're gone. I told my friends and family about this quickly after. No one I knew drove that kind of car. It was also an older model, so I don't think it could have been a rental. I don't know anyone who would do this to me and think it was funny. I did make a police report, but didn't get a license plate, so they couldn't do anything. I also know what kind of car it was. I would notice any older white SUV for months after. Never saw the exact car again. This story took place 5 years ago. At that time, I was 14 and was a Boy Scout since I was 11. Anyways, it was on summer holidays, and we are usually 2 weeks in the wild and doing Scout stuff. We get to know other Scout groups from other parts of the country. It's generally a super good time to meet new people. This time we met with 3 other groups, and we'll spend 3 weeks together. For the record, I was with 2 other guys of my group, and we shared the tent together. The days go on, and one of my friends has a crush on a girl. One day, he invites her to our tent in the evening to have some fun playing cards and telling jokes. She agreed. On that evening, she sneaked up to our tent and came with a friend of hers. This friend of hers was Maya. Anyways, we had a good time during the night, and a couple hours later they both left. During the time at the camp, a good friend of mine, Lisa, had a crush on Maya who was also into her. It was a happy moment for everyone. The days go on and Maya gets a little weird and talks alone to people who aren't in the camp. As the time goes on, rumors start spreading about how Maya tried to end herself in the forest. A kid saw her trying to strangle herself with her belt. After this, they alerted the adults, and she was going to get picked up by her parents a couple days later. She was gone for a couple days and everything went back to normal. Little did we know that Maya was back in the camp as other younglings saw her in the forest, saying things in the likes of "I want to see Lisa," whilst folding a knife. At that moment, everybody was scared as hell. The adults decided to put up a big tent and put us all inside whilst we wait for Maya to show up. Eventually she showed up, saw us and ran straight towards us with her knife in a hand. It happened so quickly, but I still remember it vividly. One of the adults managed to tackle her down and made sure that she wouldn't get up by holding her down tightly. Another adult made sure to pick up her knife and called for the police and the parents. The story is nearly to an end as the police took Maya, followed by her parents, and it was the last time I saw her. Since then, I only heard from her once. I heard she was diagnosed with schizophrenia and that she's in a clinic with people there to help her. Lisa is still traumatized by these events. One thing that bums her is that her name is one letter apart from Maya's name. People sometimes mispronounce it, and it makes her recall these events. So, this story is from years ago. Let's just say my name is Jenna for the story's sake. I haven't been back to the same place since, and I always share this story with my friends. It has become a favorite, whether they believe me or not. This is somewhat of a throwaway account because I don't want to be pinned down to where I am. I usually visit my family's cottage up north, not going to disclose specifically where for privacy reasons, every summer and on the occasion on July 4th, Thanksgiving, etc. It's a waterfront cottage facing a lake surrounded by a dense forest. It's located on a private beach, so you see your neighbor every once in a while. Everyone comes up north around the same time, so it wouldn't be uncommon to have a chat with others and us. Everyone knows each other and, subsequently, their business. My cottage sits between 2 others. One is inhabited quite frequently, and one is abandoned, to my knowledge. My family and neighbors know that European family, possibly Polish, German, etc., owns it. I just assume that they hold on to the property to maintain some sort of tangible asset in the United States. Back when I was young, around the ages of 18 to 20, my cousins, brothers, and I would get away from our family to smoke weed in the abandoned cottage to avoid any sort of scolding. It was fun, an empty cottage with some furniture that was a time capsule from the 80s. We would peer around and look at the old brown love seat, the dark den, the main living room, adjoining the dining area, and the cute little kitchen with old wine glasses laying around. It was resoundingly acknowledged that others have been through the abandoned cottage as well. There were smoked joints on the ground, footprints, old beer bottles with modern labels, and furniture was always moved around from one position to another. However, the cottage was never spruced up. It was never cleaned nor organized. So we knew that the owners weren't coming by. It was random explorers, perhaps other teenagers, doing the same thing we did. Upon some curious investigation, we saw a basement. We opened the door and saw a staircase that led to a floor that was pure dirt. It looked like a cellar from what I could see. I stood at the top of the stairs looking down and saw exposed brick. Nothing particularly interesting. Of course, we would freak each other out, saying someone lives down there, that there was a serial killer living there, or there was a corpse collection buried under the dirt floors. So none of us would go down there with our independent conviction. It would have to have been a dare or a display of bravery. One day, around Thanksgiving, 4 of us, 3 girls and my brother, went to the abandoned cottage to go smoke some joints and gossip about family. I don't see my cousins much, only during special occasions, so we sat on the tables in the dining area to smoke, chill, and chit-chat. Of course, the topic of the basement came up. We laughed and talked about who would go down there, who would most likely survive the serial killer living beneath us waiting for his next victim to enter his abode. We turned and noticed the basement was unlocked, and this was unusual, since it was always locked. The one occasion where it was unlocked was when we took a look, or one of my brothers would go down there to freak all the girls out and prove his macho, so to speak. We would always lock it afterwards, purely out of the feeling of some sort of reassurance. We chalked it up to other teenagers just like us having visited the cottage before us, and all of us girls made my older brother get up and lock the door. He stood, looked us all up and down, and jokingly said something along the lines of, "You guys are just pussies, always get a man to do the scary thing for you." We laughed, but he was the guy. If there was someone down there, he would be the most likely to defend himself. He's a big guy, 210 pounds and 6'5". He took maybe 3 steps before there was a knock. It sounded like a knock on a hollow surface. Considering that this cottage was quite old, I thought that it came from the side of the building. I don't think there's any significant insulation that would prevent an audible knock. I instantly looked at my brother, who looked smug. He said, "You know, if you ask me to do something for you, don't fool me whilst I'm doing you a favor." I looked around, waiting for one of the 2 other girls, my cousins, to fess up and mock his masculine courage. It seemed like everyone was resoundingly confused, anxious, and waiting for the same thing was. I guess my brother saw their reactions and did not see mine, and concluded that I was the source of the suspicious knocker, since my back was turned to him. "Very funny, Jenna. You think you are such a joker," my brother said with a chuckle. I turned to him, and I guess he saw my anxious face as well. I guess he could read me well. I thought that maybe him walking on the old floors unsettled some of the structural integrity of the building. Maybe it was one of our parents fooling with us. I didn't think it was from a foreign source. I quipped at him, "Just go and lock the door." He continued walking toward the door, but it opened slightly. He stopped dead in his tracks immediately. "We're going now." "Frick that hecking door," one of my cousins sternly said. We all got up from sitting on the tables. We gathered our things, including weed, beer bottles, and phones. We quickly ran to the front door, not daring to look back. My brother was the last of the anxious Kangal line that was created by the bottleneck of the lone exit. I heard significant footsteps coming from the back of the cottage. I thought it was my brother, and I turned back, and I swear to God I saw a hand opening the basement door. Oh my God. I yelled, "There's someone in the freaking basement." I managed to shakingly say after running down the stairs that led to the front door. "What?" everyone else said. My brother looked back. Holy shit. He held onto the sides of my arms to push me to go faster. "Go." We heard a foreign voice say. We ran faster, dropping bottles, pipes, and shoes. We ran so fast that our flip-flops flew off. I knew it wasn't any of us. Not even one of our parents. It was a low, stern voice from afar. My brother was right behind me. We made our escape to our cottage, thoroughly flustered and terrified. There was a homeless guy in there. I freaking saw him. My brother, out of breath, managed to say, "I guess it was common knowledge that the place was abandoned. I wouldn't neglect the possibility of someone taking refuge in there." I don't know if the guy went into the basement. When he heard us coming then, got tired of sitting on the dirt floor, then scared us. I don't know. It's a private beach, so you would have to know of the specific location to be able to understand how to get there, then also know that there is an abandoned property as well. I also know that there are squatters. To offer a further explanation, People share on Reddit that there are certain locations in our area where you could set up camp on a vacant lot and take a day to sit on the quiet beach. But I know that neighboring properties crack down on it pretty quickly and let them know that they can't settle there. I thought that would have been a good explanation. We ran to our parents after proactively hiding our weed stash. Our priorities are certainly well placed. And told them our story. They called the police, and we watched from afar to see what the hell was going on. I guess the guy left. The police came to us and told us no one was in there, but they let us know to file some sort of report regarding the abandonedness of the cottage. I think there are some sort of laws that demand that the owners should be using the cottage and executing upkeep. None of us really cared for being the Karen of the situation, so we never filed such report. At the end of the day, I understand that some people just want to have assets, whether they're shitty or not. It would suck to lose out on good property in a nice location. I think they might come back one day, since our neighbors know the family. No one else has ever filed a report to my knowledge. I guess the experience didn't shake up my brother too much, since he went back and gave me details. He found some dead squirrels and baby raccoons just laying in the living room. He said they looked quite fresh. I think that they died of natural causes, but how do two different species of animals just die in the same place? I asked him if they were mangled or obviously killed in some way, and he said no. He said the baby raccoons had fur. I did some researching and I know that baby raccoons aren't born with fur, so I deduct that they were alive for some time then somehow died in the living room. I don't want to know if something where someone killed them in there. Or maybe killed them in another place and then brought them in there to give some sort of message to any oncoming visitors. I hope it isn't the homeless god.